guys, welcome to part 2. So in the first video, I showed you guys everything that goes on the face and the steps that I take to get to the final stage that you're seeing right now. So right now I'm going to be talking to you about everything that goes kind of in this area and a little bit on the face, but we'll get to that in a minute. So let's start with primer, much like in the last video, but this one is primer for your eyes. There are two different types of things that you can put on your eyes. You can either do a base like this one, which this is the 24-hour Anti-Crease Shadow Insurance by Too Faced. This is really good. It does last a really, really long time, and it doesn't, budge. It doesn't move. It doesn't crease. It doesn't oil up. And I tend to have a little bit of oily lids. If you do too, I would definitely suggest doing something like this before putting any sort of powder on. It will help with that creasing, with that sort of oiliness that sometimes we do tend to get. Especially for my oily ladies. If you are normal skinned or dry skinned, this would work perfectly for you as well. It again will not let your eyeshadow budge or move anywhere or do anything weird that you don't want it to do. So with this one, it is a sort of like a cream. I'm gonna show you. There we go. It's a cream. It has a little bit like a tiny little bit of color. Nothing too dramatic. If we put it on the skin, let me see. It kind of blends out almost skin tone. Well, it'll look skin tone on me right now because of the color that it takes, but on your eyes, it'll look a little bit lighter. And you'll put this on and you'll kind of let it dry because it's a little wet when you first put it on. Obviously, it's a cream. And you'll let it dry. And once it's dry, it becomes almost, I want to say almost tacky, but it's not tacky to where it's uncomfortable. And this is actually what holds on to the pigment that you are about to put as far as the eyeshadow goes. There is also, depending on what look you're going for, a base that they sell, and this one is by NYX. It is just the white base. I don't think it has a name. Yeah, it's just called white. And well, that's exactly what color it is. As you can see. There we go. See, as you can see, it is just pure white. It is a cream, so you sort of have to kind of pat it into your eyes and make sure that it's nice and blended before putting anything on. If you do put a really heavy base of this, it'll turn into clumps. Your eyeshadow will turn into a clump with it. So I would suggest going very light. A little bit goes a long way, much like a lot of things in life. A little bit does go a long way. So you take this, you blend it out on your eye, and again, it depends on what kind of look you're going for. If you are going for something natural, nothing that you need colors to pop, then yes, definitely go with something like this. I do also have an Urban Decay, and I know that NYX has one that is really good too. I know Morphe has one that's really good too. It all comes down to personal preference, what your budget is like. I believe this one was, I think, $20. So it's not bad, especially if you don't use it a lot, because it'll last you a really long time. And you can keep it for up to a year. After that, it'll tend to separate and because it expires. So after that, it'll tend to kind of separate and get really oily. But before then, you are golden. And you can use this for pretty much everyday looks to, very glammed up, glittery kind of looks. If you are going for something like what I have going on right now with the whole like colorful, very, popped colors, then go with something like this as your base. This white will help your colors transform into very, very bright colors. Actually, let me show you really quickly what difference it makes. So let's say that I do, have a little bit of this and I want to take some, let's say some pink, right? If I put it on top of this color right here, it'll pop. As you can see, it pops. However, if I do it in a place where I don't have any, it'll pop, but it's not as great. It's more sheer on this end. It's very kind of faded, kind of dull. On this one, it just kind of, it's in your face, it's there. And that's why you would use something like this to recreate an eye that has a very colorful, shadow to it. Or if you want to cut your crease and put something, very bright in there, you can do that. There is also a black base that you can use to make the colors darker. I have that, I believe, in a stick form. It's just like a pencil. I also have this in a stick form, and it's called Milk. The color, it is also by NYX. Both of those are by NYX. They're essentially, again, the same thing, easier application. If you are more comfortable with the sort of pencil sort of look, you can go directly in your eye. With this, you would have to go with something like your finger or one of those flat concealer brushes to kind of go in your eye and get it all over the place. With any primer, I would suggest making sure you put down a base color. And again, depending on how colorful or how natural you're gonna go with your base, that's gonna determine what color you're going to use as your base. Again, if you are going for something a little bit, you know, more on the natural side, then I would suggest going with a color, you know, somewhere in this range right here, which is just like the very light. And again, depending on what skin tone you are, you can go from here. You can use the ones that are a little bit darker if you do tend to have a little darker skin. But if you are going with something a little bit colorful like I do, then the sky's the limit, and you can actually start with whatever color is going to be in your crease first. That is just a suggestion, but it definitely helps to have your crease down first, and that way you can kind of work on that gradient that I will show you in a tutorial. You know, after we get all done discussing the products, we can then start using them. I can start giving you guys tutorials on how to do, you know, everyday looks like this. We'll go over all of those a little bit later. But yeah, so if you are going with something a little bit colorful like I did, I started with this color in the crease and kind of worked myself from there. So moving on to eyeshadows from the pigments, from the primers. So there are two types of, I guess, eyeshadow forms, right? There is the pressed powder, which I just showed you right now, which is these little guys right here that come in little pans. They're nice and pressed. Nothing's really gonna fall out unless you get some kickback from the actual palette. And then there's something like this, which is, it's kind of hard for me to show you, I guess, except for me to open it, but hopefully I don't make a mess. So this right here is a pigment. With pigments, a little go a really, really, really long way. They can last you a really long time. As you can see, there's not much in that pan, but if I go in with my finger and I put it on a place where I don't have any base, so let's say my wrist. Do you see that? Like, isn't that crazy? It goes a really, really, really long way. And it's, again, very pigmented. That's what it is. It's a pigment. Very loose. So you have to be very careful if you are applying a pigment to your eye, because it can get all over the place. So my beginners, I suggest sticking to the pressed powders, which is these bad boys right here. And this is a very matte palette. It's just the way it is. This is actually the 35N by Morphe. But this is obviously a very matte palette. There's not a lot of shine, glitter, anything like that in there. But you can, use, there's metallics, there are, like very sheer ones, there's glittery ones. Again, it just depends on what you are going for. But if you're going for something, that has a little bit metallic in it, I would suggest putting a little bit of just the translucent powder underneath your eye while you're building your eye up, so that any extra fallout, any extra kickback from the pressed powder falls onto that and not onto your foundation or your unset skin, and that way you can just brush it off. If not, it might stain a little bit, and you might have a little bit of a fallout, streaks, especially if you do an eye look like this, where blues can be very harsh. If they, fall out and you kind of try to brush them off, they can stain you sometimes. So again, it all depends on preference. This palette is the Take Me Back to Brazil palette. This is from BH Cosmetics. I am sure that it was probably like $18, I think. $18, and that's obviously before tax and shipping, but $18, you get all these beautiful shades, and you do get two highlights in a very dark black. I love these highlights. They're actually some of my favorite highlights, especially if you grab a brush and you dip it in there and then you wet it with setting spray. It makes a huge difference in your look. And then if you are trying to go for something a little bit more natural, I do suggest getting something in the matte family. As you can see here, you can create a very, very classic, very, you know, day-to-day look with this. And we can actually do a look like this in the future. But for now, let's stick to kind of going over what they are, how they're used, and all of that. So again, it all comes down to personal preference. If you are a beginner, I suggest sticking to the pressed powders, and once you've mastered that, moving on to the pigments, as pigments can be a little bit tricky to use because there's a lot more fallout because they are very generous with the color that they give you back. So, you know, this one I believe is from Meech and Mia. This came in, again, in an Ipsy. I'm subscribed to Ipsy. This came in an Ipsy bag. If you actually aren't subscribed to Ipsy, I recommend it. It's about 10 bucks a month, and you get a lot of really nice little trial size things. It depends on what you sign up for because there is a list that you have to go through and all that, but you get things like this and you get to try them out and you get to see, you know, if they work for you. If they don't, and if they do, you can go and buy the normal size. If they don't, then you know, and you kind of just toss it or give it to your best friend. So yeah, so that is kind of like, you know, how you get eye looks down. You put your primers down, your primer or your base down, and then you start with your look. And again, depending on what look you're going for, this is what you're going to start with. All right, so let's move on to the only shine and shimmer that I like on my face, which is highlighters. So highlighters are this wonderful powder or liquid that add a nice glow to your skin. So they come in two, I guess, in two ways. They come in this like a pan, which is just like a pressed powder. This is very, very silky to the touch, and hopefully there's enough payout right here, but as you can see, it's very, very glowy, very shimmery. And that again is the powder. If you do like to go with something a little bit more liquidy, then this is the Cover FX. This is like a tiny, tiny, like, I've used this so many times, it's not over. I use it very lightly because it's very, very pigmented, and I'm gonna show you right now. Let's do it on this hand. So that right there will get you a really, really, really long way as far as shine goes. I don't know if you can see it. I don't know how well you can see it. There we go. This depends on personal preference, what you like, you know, what works best for your skin. With liquid highlighters, they tend to, for oily people, they tend to kind of be oily and maybe sometimes start to even slick off of your face. So I usually don't use the drops. They're gorgeous. They are absolutely gorgeous, but they just don't work well for me. So I tend to stick with something like this. And this is actually by Wet n Wild. And I believe this is in the color Precious Petals. This is from their highlighting, their Mega Glow collection, which is really good. I do recommend it. I love these highlighters. They're super, super, super smooth, super fun to use. And they blend into your skin like a dream. That's actually kind of what I'm using right now, and I'm not sure how well you guys can see it. I think I went a little bit light today, but again, it comes in two forms. It all depends on personal preference. If you're a little bit oily, I would stick to something like this, like a powder, so it doesn't slick off of your face. However, if you have normal to dry skin, then this right here is your guy. The way you would put this on would be with a beauty blender. Reason being is if you put it with a brush, you'll just have a streak of like highlight. It'll look something like this, and while it's gorgeous and the color is great, I wouldn't recommend it. So you would put this with a beauty blender. You would put it, I usually put it on the back of my hand to just kind of warm up the color. I'll take the beauty blender, dip it there, and then kind of pat it on my face. Some people are really brave and they will put it directly on their face. That gives you a mega glow. So if that's what you're looking for, if you're looking to be beat for the gods and glowing for the heavens, then do this on top of your foundation directly on there and then blend it out with the beauty blender, but act quick because they do tend to dry a little fast. However, if you are like me and you tend to be a little bit oily, I would suggest going with something like this. Again, you would take your fan brush, the one that I showed you in the first video, and this right here, you will just run it along your cheekbones, down the bridge of your nose, on your cupid's bow, right here, right underneath your brow bone, and that'll just bring light to your face, light and glow. Again, it depends on how much you want to use. You can use a lot of it if you want to, that is absolutely fine. One of my favorite YouTubers glow, makes the skin glow a lot. He puts a lot of it on. And so talking of that YouTuber, he actually has really good highlighters. Jeffree Star highlighters are a little bit on the pricey side, but they are definitely worth the price. They come in a huge pan and they're super, super, super good. But if you are on a budget and, you know, understandable, 2018, I would suggest going with something like this. It's really, really good. I think this one was about $4 or $5 at Walgreens, and they do have a whole bunch online if you look on. And I think they have like a $30 like free shipping. So if you spend $30, you know, which is a lot for some people, if you spend $30, you get a whole bunch of stuff and you get free shipping. So again, down to personal preference on the highlighters, but there are two forms of getting them, and it all depends again on your personal preference. So let's move on to the lashes. So no look is complete without a pair of false lashes. I keep mine in little boxes. They don't come in these little boxes, but I put mine in these little boxes right here. They tend to preserve them a little bit better. I got this at the Container Store for like 50 cents or something like that. But yeah, so these are also on personal preference, but it also is, there's a lot to do with your eye shape. If you have very short, tiny little eyes, I would suggest grabbing your eyelash and giving it a trim before you put them on. And I don't mean a trim by like cutting the lashes, don't do that. But I mean cutting the actual strip. And let me show you guys right here. By the way, this is what the eyelash tool that I mentioned in my first video looks like. So with this, I would go and trim it from this side. So you would measure it on your eye. You will take it out of the package and kind of like measure it. If you think that it's too big, if it obviously comes out to here, way too big for you. So I would suggest grabbing it and cutting it from the outer corner in. And the way you'll know which one the outer corner is, it's because the lashes will be more flared out. So it's this end right here, and then these right here. These are tiny, as you can see, they're a little tiny. These are a little bit bigger. I would cut from here. I wouldn't cut this way. You can't cut the hairs, it'll look weird. So cut from here, and you only have to snip a little bit of it. So measure it, snip it, and then you put the glue on there and you stick them on. And that actually makes a huge difference for the look. If I wouldn't have worn like lashes with this, it would have looked a little crazy. So the eyelashes sort of put everything together, and that goes from anything from like a classic look to something like this to something very artistic. Again, the thickness to the eyelashes and size and everything depends on what you like. Do you like drama? Do you like classic? Do you like clean? Do you like wispy? I mean, the sky's the limit when it comes to eyelashes. So again, everything in makeup is, you know, I do say it's personal preference, but it really is. You can do makeup on your face however you want. And there are certain rules, I guess, right? But it doesn't mean you necessarily have to follow those rules to a T. Experiment, have fun. Makeup is about having fun. That's how I got into it. That's why I'm still in it, and that's why I'm doing this, because it's fun for me. It's a distraction. I love doing it. I love what I can create, what I can recreate, because there's face charts out there that you can look at and try to recreate. So remember, have fun when you're doing it. Don't stress yourself out. If it doesn't come out right the first time, that's absolutely fine. Keep practicing, and practicing and practicing. I promise you that at some point in time, your blending will get better. If I showed you guys some of the very, very first pictures that I took thinking that I was, like this whole makeup artist, you guys would laugh because they look crazy. My lashes were down out here. Like I wasn't, my blending wasn't on point. But again, just practice makes perfect. So make sure to have fun when you're doing it. Practice a lot, practice from the mirror. If you have nothing to do, hey, sit there and go to town. Go crazy. Sky's the limit when it comes to makeup. So let's finish this off with some setting spray. So setting spray is kind of like the powder, the setting powder, right? It finishes everything off in your look. So this is the MAC Prep and Prime bottle that I have here. I love this formula. It's very hydrating for the makeup that you already have on your skin, and it tends to kind of just make everything be put together. I did before this one though love the NYX matte, the mattifying spray. They do have a dewy. Again, it depends on what you like. Again, I tend to go with the mattes. I tend to like kind of like that flat base that I can kind of build off of, and that's what this gives me right here. So with this spray, this is when you are done with absolutely everything. Lips, eyes, I mean everything. Once you are done and you're like, hey, I'm about to leave my makeup behind and close everything and put everything away, this is what you're going to do. This is quite easy. You hold it away from your skin, or from your face, I'm sorry, about 12 inches, not too far, and then you give yourself a good couple of sprays. I know that some people do go crazy with it. It really doesn't make a difference how much you put it on, you know, your face, as long as you put it on. So I usually tend to do kind of like a 1, 2, 3 sort of thing. I know some people kind of look up and then they let the, you know, the mist kind of fall on them. I wouldn't suggest getting it really up close because it will kind of wash off your makeup. So kind of do, you know, go out here, 3 pumps, and you should be good. And hopefully, I don't wet the camera, but once you do that, you'll see the shininess on your skin. I'm not sure if you can see it on mine right now, but it will dry, and it'll dry matte, and your face will feel nice and refreshed. If you do need a refresher, you know, in the day when you do wear makeup, I would suggest carrying something like this. Maybe something not as expensive as this primer, maybe like the NYX one that's I think like maybe $10, $12, and you can use that one as well, and that one will just kind of like put your look all together. If you are seeing a little bit of shine, I would suggest going in with some powder, you know, dusting it on really, really, really lightly, and then kind of just misting yourself with this, and it'll bring your makeup back to life. Especially for those really long days where you know, if you have an event, a photo shoot, a video, something. If you're going to have makeup on for a really long time, I would suggest carrying a little bit of compact of just translucent powder and a setting spray. It'll, with the touch-ups, it'll make your makeup come right back to life. So yeah, we do have a couple of, let's see, we do have a couple of other things to go over before I let you guys go back into the real world. So lip liners right here. I'm sure that everybody at some point in time has seen, you know, has seen or has used a lip liner, and maybe sometimes that's the only thing that people do use because it's easy to use, right? So with something like this, you would just go and line the outside of your lips. If you want to create the illusion of bigger lips, then you would overline. Overlining is just going a little bit above your natural lip line. However, if you do have bigger lips like me, you can leave them as is because, you know, who cares? But if you are, you know, self-conscious or you want to make it a little bit smaller, then you would underline, and that is just going inside of your natural lip line. Obviously, you don't want to go like, you know, in here because that wouldn't look natural, but just a little bit, like a little, just a hair inside, and it will make a difference when you do apply your you know, lipstick or your lip gloss, whatever you prefer to use. I tend to go for lipsticks, specifically liquid lipsticks. They are, again, they come in matte, and I love the matte look, so that's what I use. But there is, you know, satin finishes, there's cream finishes, there's tons of finishes, and those we will go on in another video because there's a lot of colors and explanations that go behind lip glosses and lipsticks, and you know, what works and what doesn't. So yeah, there is also a eyeliner. So this is a Clinique eyeliner. This one, I believe, was about $25. So you don't have to splurge again with something like this. This is a liquid liner. It has a brush tip, meaning it paints kind of like a brush, as you can see. And you can do really thick lines, really, you know, really thick lines, really light lines. You can go really, really thin if you wanted to. And that's the good thing about using something like this. It's really easy to use. You could go with a NYX one. They do have a dupe to this one. It's very, you know, good. I actually used it before it ran out, and then I was too lazy to get another one, and I had this one just sitting there, so I started using this one. I know Kat Von D has really good liners as well. I would suggest checking her out. If you use liners like as an everyday thing, you would love her stuff. My favorite one was the Trooper, but I know she has a couple of new items that she released recently, so it's definitely worth checking out if that's the only thing that you do use on a regular basis, you know, because it's something that's worth the price that you're paying for. Obviously there's one that goes in your waterline. It is a pencil. This actually dupes for a lip liner and a pencil. With that, you would just go, you would pull your eye, not tug it, but like you would like just kind of press here and expose that little pink waterline, and you would go in there with the pencil. I don't tend to use colors inside of my waterline. I don't really like it. So I usually just use the black. I know a lot of people can use purples and blues, and again, up to personal preference. Whatever look you're going for, that's what you use, and you know, rock it. So that concludes this whole really lengthy 2-part video. But I wanted to show you guys all of the tools that, you know, you needed, and that was in the first video with the brushes. And I wanted to kind of go over all of the, I guess, you know, things that we will be using for the tutorials coming up. For the tutorials, for the makeovers, I will try and have some of my friends as special guests, just kind of, you know, to show you guys how to apply makeups on different textures of skin, different colors of skin, different faces, you know, all of that. And because again, while there are no certain rules that you have to follow, some tend to look better on certain faces, right? Like I couldn't, you know, do something like, you know, I couldn't contour like a heart-shaped person would contour, because it would look weird on my facial features. But again, we can go over the ways to contour a certain face once we have a certain face in front of the camera. But that's, you know, in the future to come. Make sure to like and subscribe. All of my social media handles will be down below, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.